Hello there. I wonder if I am live now. I'm not even sure. Hello. Can you hear me? I'm just waiting to see if I'm actually live or not. We are having a thunderstorm out there. So I'm not sure if the internet is okay. Let me know. I see some people in the chat, but I'm not sure if y'all can actually hear me or not. So let me type. Can you hear? Live you are the Black Ponder. Okay. Looks like I'm good. I'm just setting some things up here. Actually, I think it's here, right? No? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and set this up. Excellent. Okay, let's see. I think I'm good. One last thing. Okay, that's good. Are you smoking? Oh, hello. Let's see here. We got chat people, and it is. Let's create 08. Hello, and then Ben B. Hello, or Kendra. Hi. Not sure if you're still here. So what happened is there's a thunderstorm outside, and here I'm up here in Memphis, Tennessee. The infrastructure isn't the best, so the internet went cut out. It cut out through the thunderstorm. So I didn't know. I was about to send a message to say, hey, I can't do this, but it looks like the internet's back. So at least in my end. But if it cuts out again, you know why. It's a thunderstorm happening. And I also was trying to do this outside, but my camera was not working, so I had to bring it back. So I'm here. I just had to move here to the bedroom. So let me sit up. Yeah, I'm just, let me see if I get a good angle. This is just my bedroom. It's not no big deal. It's just a bed. Just a bedroom, man. No, nothing wrong. Yeah, lights, man. I hate that I'm gonna have to probably get a ring light or something because my face is in shadow. But I hate having to do the whole YouTuber ring light thing. Okay, so first of all, let's answer some questions or comments. Let's see. Philosophy discussion 101, the Black Ponder. So sit back, relax, drink with some. Okay, yep. Chat or no chat? There is no try. Okay. 4 p.m. PST no longer. Yeah, I said 9 p.m. It depends. Unfortunately, I can't. Currently, I can't do consistent. I'm still gonna try to shoot for 4 p.m. But that may change. It depends on my schedule because this is kind of a hobby thing. I don't do this for work, so I gotta prioritize other stuff. So the time might change, and if you can't make it, hey, I get it. I understand. but I can't. Unfortunately, I can't keep a consistent thing, and I know that's bad for like, views. Or let me see if I can prop this up. This camera might be bad for views, but oh well. What you gonna do? Prop this up a little bit. Oh, I'm so dark. Oh well. I'm trying to see if I can get any kind of light. I can't do it. See, I was trying to use my other camera, but it just wasn't happening. Okay, so what else? Looks like 7 p.m. Okay, 7 p.m. your time. It's 9 p.m. my time. Cool topic. Do you know anything about bubble chambers? The first 3 minutes of the universe's combustion? No, I don't know about that. I mean, I know about like roughly the start of the universe and how started the Big Bang Theory, right? With everything started out as a singularity, where the universe's mass was infinitely small. Then it expanded, and I think during that time the laws of physics as we know it were not in existence, because everything was at such a high level of energy and heat. It couldn't, the theories of physics as we know it breaks down. So at that point, and then like within a fraction of a second, the universe expanded in this, unrealistic, just absurd amount of, this absurd rate. They call that cosmic inflation, which that's the current theory, which is accepted by most physicists and cosmologists, but there's no evidence to currently that we can't confirm that, but it is the best explanation apparently. Like during the initial stages of the universe, the theory is that it expanded to from like, I don't know, I think it's like from they say it's like from a hair, the length of the width of a human hair to like 20 light years within like less than a nanosecond, which is like mind-boggling fast expansion. But they say that what happened, these physicists, because that's currently the only way they're able to explain how homogeneous the universe is, how its energy is like evenly distributed throughout the entire universe roughly, right? As opposed if it just inflated with the normal rate that it is now, the energy and the mass of the universe would be unevenly distributed. But there's this kind of weird evenly distribution, which is hard to explain. So that's where the inflation comes, and maybe that's what you're talking about. This bubble chambers. The first 3 minutes. Oh, okay. So 3 minutes would be past cosmic inflation, I believe, right? Yeah. I don't know. I could go on, but I think that's not what you're talking about. Okay, and then some Yoda references. Are you smoking? No. What time is it in Tennessee? Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. Yeah, thunderstorm. What's your message to British people right now? Bear in mind, it's 3 a.m. and cold. Wow, it's 3 a.m. in Britain. Well, it's cool that you're awake. I have no message for British people. I don't know. What's up? Hello, people. Hello, people from Britain. Glad you could make it. Still winter in California. Talk about Brahma. Oh, okay. You're getting a little metaphysical with the. I was just doing when I'm talking about cosmology. Yeah, cosmology. I'm just doing the physics version, but you're bringing up like Hinduism type of cosmology. I mean, we could talk about that if you would like. So one thing that's interesting, I remember I had a teacher, philosophy teacher, and that's where that was a few philosophy college courses I took. I took 2, and she taught one of them, and she was describing Brahma as the deity of Hinduism, where the reason why this deity created this deity didn't create the universe. This deity is the universe, right? But the Brahma decided to create diversity, or to differentiate things, because it wanted to play. This entity, this omega, this ultimate reality wanted to play, and so the diversity is like Brahma exploring itself, right? Or kind of just like it's a creative venture, right? Which is kind of interesting. But in the reality is there is no such in this paradigm or this belief. There really is no diversity. It's all like it's a fiction that was created by Brahma. But this divinity created this diversity, so as an expression of creativity, that's fascinating. Oh yeah, I've been changed. So I do this Japanese class thingy. It's not really a class. It's just we're learning Japanese together. It's this other thing that I do as part of this other group I'm with. And I can't keep a consistent schedule because I'm doing so much other stuff nowadays. So I just go up and down. Fortunately, they got VODs, videos on demand. So you got that. I try my best to kind of notify people in advance, but I can only do so much. Yeah, smooth jazz. That's what I like. That's in the background. Some chill pop. Chillhop, which is one of the major lo-fi hip-hop YouTubers. There's so many of those, right? But this is one of the first ones to do it. I'm fond of their music. Okay. Yeah, I like to keep it relaxed. What do you have? Okay, hello, Patrick Fairfax. Let me see if I can sit up. I'm gonna try. This is, as you can see, this is just a bed. Do a Buddhist lotus flowers stance here. Try and do that. So Patrick Fairfax asks, what do you have to prioritize over this? By the way, even if it's bad for views, know that a single view on one of your videos is full of love and wonder. Yeah, I do know that. But thanks for reiterating that. Yeah, I don't care about numbers of views. I don't, like, oh, got 1,000 people watching. I could care less, but just one. That's all I care about. Just y'all on the chat watching the channel. That's great. Cool. I appreciate that. So I'm about quantity, not I'm about quality, not quantity. So that's cool. And what did you prioritize over this? Okay, so yeah, as I've stated in the past videos, I kind of transition more to a more active in the community nowadays. I'm trying to become more socially active, participate. I had this T-shirt. Stand with Planned Parenthood. I volunteered for Planned Parenthood. They had an event, and I volunteered for them. I think they do some good work in here in Tennessee. They're getting defunded, and because they offer reproductive health care, and in America we live in the Stone Age, at least here in the South, right? And there's this idea that women, they really just need to make babies, and that's all they got to do, and then the men just have to be patriarchs, and it's this old ass archaic type of thinking. But they're passing these laws that are like locking these ideologies in. So I'm trying to be part of that movement to combat that. So that's what I did. I did that, and then I also did this mutual aid feed for this other group I'm part of. We just collect food that people are going to throw away, and then that's good food. It's part of my work for this organization called Food Not Bombs, which I'm a part of, and they're about reducing food waste. Statistically speaking, about like 40% of all food that's produced is just thrown away. Which is so. Oftentimes people throw up these arguments like we got to deal with overpopulation, or we're running out of resources and there's too many people. It's like we have a lot of resources and we just throw them away. We misuse them, right? And if we just actually was more smart about how we used our resources, rather than focusing on all this other stuff that's actually harmful, we could help people. So that's what we do. So that's what I was doing in them. That's what I prioritized over this. I was collecting food that was going to be thrown away. That's good food. I joined this group that fed hungry people, or houseless people. The Artist of Life. I've never read The Artist of Life. The Philosophy of Bruce Lee. Okay. Not familiar with that. I didn't know he was, but that doesn't surprise me. I'm sure he had a lot of ideas. I've seen his films, but I haven't really got into his ideas. Do you believe in science or God, or both? The question is, I believe in both. It's weird that there's this verses, right? We kind of live in that world where everything's just opposing everything else, versus this, and it's it's hard to move forward, right? It's you either believe in God or you believe in science. You can't believe in both. That's not gonna help move us along. So yeah, I'm a believer of both. As my doggy jumped up on the bed, but it looks like he's not gonna come up to me. Oh well. Yeah, he's actually. Let me see if I can turn it around right quick. Whoops.
Listen, man.
That's my doggy. Hello, hey, how's it going, brothers? You wouldn't want to go outside because it's raining. Maybe by the time I'm finished with this, it'll stop raining and we can go outside. Okay, what else? Complexity. Yep, we gotta talk about that. I'm interested in philosophy that can apply to real life. Yep, me too. To better ourselves and the way of living in complex society. Yep. I'm not interested in philosophy that's too abstract or too theoretical, where it's people are just flexing they're basically doing mental gymnastics. It's kind of this, oh, I'm just smart because I can analyze these really complicated ideas, but it really doesn't mean anything. Like philosophy focuses on, that's a chair, but does the chair actually exist? Or like, I remember somebody was talking to me, that's a rock. And I'm like, yeah, rocks are inorganic. Really? But maybe the rock is actually alive. It's like, I don't know about like that kind of that kind of like discussion. It gets a little too abstract for me, but I'm more about the practical. Are you teaching Planned Parenthood for teens, sir? Nope. I was actually tabling. It was like a festival, and Planned Parenthood had a table, and we were just sitting at the table asking for donations and volunteers if people wanted to volunteer for Planned Parenthood. And also we were passing out resources like free condoms and all types of reproductive health care items we were passing out. Yeah, that's what we were doing. And we're doing that to teens and adults. Okay. We could certainly talk about the philosophy of reproductive, reproductive rights, if you want to do that. I've made a few videos about that topic. If you want to check those out. Do you find annotation note-taking to be necessary when reading philosophy? I do. I don't think it should. Yeah, some people don't need to do that, but I need to do that because I got a bad memory. But when I write stuff down, it really helps me remember what I read. So I annotate the crap out of my books. That's why I'm really into print books, because I like writing in books. I know you can, a lot of these e-readers now, you can like write in the e-reader with the stylus, but I don't know. I just like the writing with the pencil. So it helps me out. But annotation is not for everybody. A lot of people don't need that. They can just remember because they got better memories. But I need it. Bruce Lee is not only a martial artist, an actor, filmmaker, and a pioneer. He actually majored in philosophy at the... Oh, okay, cool. Philosophy major. Of living to improve ourselves, he always stressed the importance of personal growth, constant learning, expansion, and adoption. Yeah, that's great. It's good to, lifelong learning. That's good. Sometimes you could take that too far, right? Where you start like making that more like hustle culture, which is and then you start like getting caught up in like associating your value in only what you can produce, which is like, that could be kind of toxic. So you don't want to take that too far, but there's always opportunities to grow and learn and better yourself. So that's good. Okay, so I think this. And so I would just mention today's topic, which is addressing complexity. So let me pull up some of my notes here. Yeah, so what I want to talk about today is, so life is hard, right? I guess not make a better, use a better word. Life is complicated, right? Life is not straightforward. And, I guess that's what I want to focus on today. I think we need to kind of, I guess not maybe appreciate that, but kind of acknowledge. Yeah, acknowledge is the word. Acknowledge that life is complicated, right? And philosophy is a great tool to confront that. I think oftentimes what you see is people are confronted with the reality that life is complicated, not necessarily like difficult or hard, but just it's complicated. It's not straightforward, right? It's like there's not easy paths, and because of that, people kind of get lost, or they kind of just like, what am I going to do? Or they think like, okay, something's wrong. There's this is not supposed to be the case. Right? People get, you start, I see this like, what, then it's like maybe people start giving up, or, they just stop cold, and it's like they continue, or they stop moving forward, and then they're like, okay, I got to figure out an easier path or easier way to do that, without really understanding, like, life is complicated, like that's normal, right? And that's something that we got to navigate through. It's not, you can't avoid it, because it's like avoiding life, right? You can't avoid complexity, because that's what life is. Life is complexity, right? So we got like, and so the best way to deal with that is learn tools to, deal with life's complexity. Hello, natural element buckle. Wait a minute. Nature lament buckle. Something like that. Hello. Nothing negative about that, as long as we learn to improve ourselves as human beings. Yeah, learning is good. Life is complicated because people are complex creatures. Yeah. And it's not just people, it's just everything. The ground you walk on is complicated, right? The air you breathe is composed of all types of different molecules, right? You operate equipment constant, like your smartphone is like a complex device. Right. Your car you drive is complicated. I just showed you my doggy. My dog is a complex creature, not a simple creature, not a simple animal. Just like human beings, I mean, everything is complicated. Nothing is really straightforward. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have. Sometimes we catch a break and it's like, oh, that was easy. That's a surprise. But I think we live in our current mode of thinking is like, whoa, this is complicated. It's not normal. Like, I need to, like, there's something wrong here. It's like, there's nothing wrong. It's like, that's what, like, life is complicated. Like, that's just how it is, right? So, selective complex. Oh, wait a minute. Did I skip something? Sometimes we overthink thinking of things that are simple, which could stress and personal problems. Yeah, you don't want to overthink stuff. Sure. I mean, just, an example is, democracy. Democracy. Democracy is complicated. We want to live in a democratic society. That's what we want. Like, that's good. A democratic society is good. But what happens is lots of things that happen in the democratic society, conflict with each other, and this becomes a lot of problems. And then it's like, what happened? What's going on? Why is this not working? What's the problem here? Well, it's complicated, right? Why? Because in democracy, you have to listen to the opinions of everybody. Like, everybody's opinion initially is valid until you decide otherwise, the public, the society as a whole. So how do you deal with that when you got like a large society of millions and millions of people, right? How does a democracy of millions upon millions of people work? It's going to be very, very complicated, and that you can't there's no oversimplification with that. Like, it's just complicated structure, right? So, but sometimes we're like, wow, we're looking. I think people don't appreciate, or they don't acknowledge, they look at the state of affairs and they're like, why is this happening? It's like, well, it's happening because you're dealing with the opinions of like many, many, many different people, right? And that has to be managed, right? So, and it's hard. It's not easy. So democracy is hard because it's complicated, right? And some, we're, I think, people start falling into these traps. It's like, well, democracy doesn't work, or like, well, we should adopt these other systems that, and it's like, well, it can work, but we just have to acknowledge that it's complicated, right? So we have to develop like really complicated systems for it to work. Yeah, that's one example. Let's see. Selective complexity. Let's see. Taking from the philosophy of Lao Tzu, sometimes we have to flow like water and adopt the changes of the changing world. Sometimes, but sometimes, you're put. So, I mean, a lot of times that does work, but sometimes the flow is like incorrect or wrong, and sometimes you gotta like fight against the flow. You gotta like, swim upstream, which is hard, right? Because that stream is really pushing you, right? So how do you swim upstream? Well, you gotta develop like a steamboat. You gotta develop like a power, one of those like jet skis, right? That's how you do it, which is the complex system, right? Sometimes you do gotta go with the flow, and oftentimes you don't, right? Sometimes it's like the flow is leading you in bad directions, and you gotta like change course. And you might say, well, how do you do that? How do you fight against the flow? You gotta develop more complicated structures to go against that flow. Pseudo democracy is complicated, as opposed to what natural element uncle. I know I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry. So pseudo democracy is complicated, but real democracy is not complicated. I don't get it. What are you saying? There's always simplicity within complexity. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, simplicity does exist, and sometimes simplicity is good. But sometimes things just are not simple. When we go back to the example of cosmology, we were talking about that. That's another debate that physicists have all the time. There's this idea like they're looking for a theory of everything, right? Because currently you have the theory of general relativity, Einstein's theory that combines space and time together, and energy and mass as one. You have that theory, but then the problem is that theory doesn't work when you get into the very small. And so you have this other theory that deals with that called quantum mechanics. A quantum physics, and that's another theory, right? That's kind of fills the holes of general relativity. But even that theory kind of breaks down when we talk about gravity, because quantum mechanics can't account for like all the influences of gravity. So you got this school of physicists that are like, well, we just got to search for the perfect equation, which will tie it all together, right? And so that years and years are spent trying to find this simple thing. Or sometimes some physicists will look at like quantum mechanical equations, and like quantum mechanic structures, and they'll be like, ugh, that's ugly. I gotta make this more graceful. We gotta make this more elegant in the mathematics. But then you have this other school of physicists that are like, well, maybe it's just not graceful. Maybe it's not elegant. Maybe it's just messy. Maybe there is no theory of everything, right? There are only like disjointed like theories that can only explain certain parts of physics, and you need to use other theories to explain other aspects of physics. maybe it's not all like this smooth, like integrated, interwoven, like set of like methods that can explain everything. It could very well be the case that it's like extremely complicated, and that's all there is to it. Right. And so that could be the case. So what happens? I mentioned that because there's a lot of physicists that are like spending huge amounts of time and effort, and they're not going anywhere trying to find this theory of everything. Whereas there's other physicists that are like, just accepting the fact that reality is complicated, and like the structures of reality it's a complicated situation, and we just have to work with the complexity. So we just gotta create this mathematics that's like really difficult. It's really hard because that's what's required for some of the math. That's interesting. Let's see. Sometimes we make things complicated that are simple. Yeah, sometimes we do complicate things that should be simple. That's definitely what happens. That is the case. I don't know. I think it's more often the case though that we simplify things that are actually complicated. Yeah, I think we run into that problem a lot more than the reverse. And the other thing, I don't think we acknowledge that as people. We don't acknowledge like, what? We simplify too much stuff. We don't accept that there's a lot more about reality that's complicated. We try and simplify it and then we just run into all these problems. We're like, oh damn, we missed all this stuff about what we were doing because we were trying to make it all simple, when in reality it was really complicated. Right? But we didn't want to deal with the complexity. Right? That's what I think. The best path is always the easiest path. Like what? Yeah, I don't agree with that. Sometimes it's the easy, sometimes the best path is the easiest path. But not always. Sometimes the best path is the hardest path, or like a very hard path, right? There's so many examples. Like, if you want to learn, you talk about learning, right? Learning is important. Some things are just hard to learn. Like some things are just not easy to learn, right? It takes a while. Like, now you can like kind of dumb it down. Philosophy, for instance, right? A perfect example. Why this is not perfect, but a good example of this is, I threw. People when they try and learn philosophy, oftentimes they rely on other people to explain it in more simpler terms. Like me, like somebody like me, but you gotta be careful with that because the person that's explaining it more simply, it might be getting it wrong. So, the best way to learn philosophy is actually to just read the philosophical texts as the original, which are much more difficult to do. But that's actually the best way to do it because then you're not like relying on somebody who could be wrong. That's a huge problem with a lot of people's admiration with the philosopher, quote unquote, Jordan Peterson, where a lot of people say, oh, he's my gateway. I made a video about him. A horrible philosopher. Very bad. But people like him because they're like, oh, he introduced me to like a lot of philosophy. He's like the gateway into my philosophy. Yeah, but like the way he interprets philosophy is just wrong. I know it's simple. Like he simplifies a lot of things, but it's like incorrect. Right? But the problem is like people like they're like, well, I want it simple, and then that's the best way to learn. Like, no, it's like sometimes you gotta be like, you know what? I'm just gonna have to sit down and I'm gonna have to like spend a month and read this like really complicated work. And then after you finish reading, you're like, okay, now I understand. It was hard. It was hard, but I understand now, and I don't have to rely on this guy who's like giving me this simplified version that's like incorrect. You know what I mean? Let's see. There's always solutions to problems, just like the simplicity and complexity. You just have to find them. Not interested in the theory, more the practicing the uses of the five senses. If you can't get into the front door to your house, go to the back door, for instance. If things are hard to learn, simplify them and find an easy way to learn. Everyone is different. You have to find what is useful to you. But you can only simplify so much. Some things, like I said, just some things are hard to learn. Like, I'm learning Japanese. That's a hard language to learn. It's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like for an native English speaker, Japanese is difficult. It's just hard. It's not easy. It's not an easy language to learn, and it's not like a simple. You can only simplify it so far. Sometimes you just have to just do the work. Right, be like, okay, I'm just gonna have to like struggle through this to learn. It's a very difficult language to learn, and there's just no easy way to do it. You just have to language learning in general is not easy, And it's funny because you go on YouTube and you go on these websites or these language, and they try and make it simple. Like, let's gamify these language learning situations, like I forgot what they call them, Babbel, and they try and make it as easy, but you can only use those so much so far. At a certain point, you're gonna hit like a wall. Like, you're gonna have to like jump into the hard work of being like, learning like the real difficult things of the language, right? There's many things that are like that. Like, okay, you've reached like the simple. It's not like riding a bicycle, right? Some things in life are like learning how to ride a bicycle. Like, it's easy. You just kind of, you struggle through the initial balancing, learning how to balance, and then you do it. Or like swimming, for instance, right? I don't even know how to swim, but I think learning how to swim is a lot like probably learning how to ride a bicycle. You kind of have to struggle through the initial phase, and then eventually you're like, oh, okay, I get it, right? But there's other things that it just doesn't work like that. It's like philosophy, for instance. Learning philosophy is not like riding a bicycle, right? It's a constant struggle, right? Or language learning, I think it's the same too. Even like English, like I'm a native English speaker, and every day I encounter English words I've never seen before in my life. Right? I still learn English to this day. Like, that's how difficult language is. I don't know, that's how I feel. The harder to learn paths are often very rewarding when we reach milestones as we progress. Yeah, they can be. And that's cool. I'm actually not about like doing something hard just for the sake of doing it hard, or like, I'm all about like, hey, the easiest path is possible. Right? I'm all about that. Think smart, not hard. But but at the same time, not knocking, because sometimes people do. It's often the case that people will do hard things just to feel rewarded, which is great. That's cool. A sense of achievement. I'm just saying, like, there are many things in life that are just complicated, and they're not, and there's just no way to simplify them. Right? It's just, and I think people run into issues because they don't want to accept that fact. They think like, oh, I could just simplify my way through this. And it's like, it just doesn't happen. And then they're like, oh no, what am I gonna do? I can't do, or like, this is hard. It's like, no, you just have to accept the fact that it's complicated and like go from there. Right? What works for me may or may not work for. Oh, okay. I think you already said that. Your own way to learn. Yeah, there's many different ways to learn. But just because there's many different ways to learn doesn't mean there could be a simple way to learn it. It might be like 7 different ways to learn something, but maybe all those 7 ways are complicated. And that's what I'm saying. Taking for Bruce Lee's philosophy of his martial arts. Okay. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add that is specific. Yeah, I'm really into that. I'm really into that. Yeah, I think philosophy kind of has that problem, generally speaking. I think a lot of people like, for example, Marxism, where people really get hardcore into Karl Marx. And, you know, they don't want to acknowledge, like, you know, Karl Marx actually had some bad ideas. So a lot of his ideas were good, but not all of them. But, you know, you take what he said that was good, and then you disregard, like, the stuff, like, that was not. But, you know, a Marxist will be like, no, I have to, like, firmly adhere to every single thing he said, right? I mean, I'm with you there with the Bruce Lee. Same thing with I'm reading Hegel, and I actually meet Hegelians, and I'm like, wow, you take, like, everything that guy says to gospel. Hegel has some really good ideas, but there's a lot of ideas he also had which were bad. You just gotta work with it. You know, I would argue the same thing with religion. You know, there's a lot of good ideas in the Bible, and there's a lot of, like, really bad ideas in the Bible. And you gotta, like, take the good stuff and, you know, be like, okay, this is the good stuff. I don't know. That's how I feel. And just reject all the bad stuff that's in the Bible, which there's a lot of that. You know, you take the bad and the good. You can't just accept. And that's what I'm talking about. See, that right there is what I'm talking. That's complicated. You know, people want to be simple. It's like, no, I take everything. Either I take everything or I take nothing. It's like, no. Life is more complicated than that, right? You gotta, like, critically think about what you're consuming or what you're learning about. Some of it's gonna be very good. Some of it's gonna be garbage. Some of it's gonna be okay, and you have to synthesize, and you gotta, like, filter it out, right? That's what I mean. Like, it's complicated. It's not straightforward. Like, so then how do you determine what's the bad stuff, what's the good stuff? Okay, now we're starting to get into the complexity of it. Like, how do you determine what's good and what's bad? Like, how do you make these decisions? You got to think all that through. It's not easy. It's not straightforward. Let's see. Find the original text to learn. Yeah, you know, you learn from the original text, which can be complicated. More complicated than they just go into somebody's summary of what somebody's saying. But, you know, it's something. It's good to, like, you know, have that as a supplement, the summary. But you shouldn't rely on it. Basically, you shouldn't rely on simplicity all the time. Whereas some people will always say, like, no, you gotta always take the simplest route. You know, that's the best route. It's the simplest route. Like, no, not necessarily. But I do feel like humans, as people, we fall into that trap, and it's really messing us up. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I think I skipped. Let's see. For instance, it's easy for me to action what I'm learning in order to remember it. Yeah, that's cool. I have to write everything down in order for me to remember things. Okay. Yeah. Find the way you learn. And yeah, there's different ways of learning. Some people are like visual learners. Some people are audio learners. They learn through listening. You know, some people are they gotta learn writing it down. That's the best way. Some people are readers. They learn best by reading. Kind of like people, I'm like that, right? I need to, like, have an instruction manual. Some people, like, you know, the instruction manual doesn't help them at all. But I'm the type of person, give me a manual, an instruction manual. That's the best way for me. A reference manual. That's the best way for me. But not everybody's like that. Let's see. And then we got Efron, I think. Yeah, but who defines what is the good and bad stuff? God or us limited humans, in your opinion? Well, that's a complicated question, right? First of all, like, how do you know, like, you say who defines what's good and what's bad? God? Okay, so let's say, like, okay, God is the one that defines what's good or bad, right? and it's not limiting humans. But then how do you know what God is saying? Right. If you say like, okay, not humans don't determine what's good or what's bad, God does. Okay, so how do you know, how do you determine what God, how God determines things? Like, how do you know that? First of all, you're going to have to use your limited brain to think that through. Like, you're going to have to use your human limitations to process what God wants. Number one. Number two is like, oftentimes people will say like, oh, what God says is in the biblical text. But like, the Bible is this censored, curated, like edited book that it's been edited many times. It's like multiple versions of it. Right? Well, King James, New International Version. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like, and who decided those? Did God decide which version? No, it's like people censored that. There were many books that were in the Bible that were omitted. And who omitted those books? God? No. Like, people omitted those books. How do you know? So, like, how do you acknowledge, like, okay, why were these books omitted? Like, it was people that decided that. God didn't decide that. So it's like, how do you even know, like, the book that you're reading, that you go to, like, a store and you buy this book, or you go to church, you handed this book? How do you even know, like, that's the word of God? Somebody told you that, right? So, how, a human being told you that. Right, unless you got like some vision or some like some sort of like you were in this dream state and God like specifically talked to you, which I'm not. If that's something that happened, then okay. But what I'm saying is like even that's if you say like, well, I don't listen to people, I listen to God. But how do you even know what God is telling you, right? I'm not saying like I speak as a Christian myself. I'm a believer, but that kind of like thinking is like, it's almost, I would say, kind of short-sighted. It's like you're not really thinking that through. It's like, because how do you even like what is your rationale for even determining what God wants? Right? Is it just like, oh, I'm reading the Bible, that's it? But it's like the Bible is this thing that was curated and edited and censored and like translated multiple times by human beings, right? So that's honestly, is that the true God, will of God? I mean, you have to really think that one through. That's all I'm saying. I find that writing is relaxing and relieve the daily stresses in life. After writing down all my problems, that's cool. Writing is therapy. That's cool. And HS, hello. What do you say to the God knows best view? Meaning it is not for us to critique, but to submit to his word as we're lesser beings. So yeah, I just go back to what I'd said before. It's like, okay, well, if God knows best, how do you know what God is telling you? Like, how do you know that what you're hearing is from God, and how do you know what you're hearing is not for? Like, how do you make that determination? Right? First of all, number one, let's start there. How would you defend God from your knowledge? I wouldn't defend God from my knowledge. First of all, God doesn't need any defense. God is omnipotent. If you believe like he's an all-powerful being, right? He doesn't need to be defended, right? God, or they don't need to be defended, or however you define God. So I wouldn't defend. There's no need to defend God. So, oh, I'm sorry. You said define. Oh, I'm sorry. How would you define God? Well, with my limited. Oh, that's what you said. Okay. Let me reverse. But that I just take that last response how you will. That's for your information, FYI. But how would you define God? I just take that simple, you know, God is love. I like that. I like that. They saw my God derives from the Jesus Christ. That's what you know. I kind of put a lot of the definition of God as the life of Jesus Christ, and so I'm more of the love God, the God of love. Like, you know, I did further. I would say God is love. That, you know, and then we could further get into that if you want to start like having a discussion on theology, which is complicated. If you want to do that, yeah, I would start there. Maybe simplicity to me, maybe complexity to you. We will have our own way of dealing with things. That's what I mean when I say we are all different when dealing with things. Or complexity to me may be simplicity to you, and vice versa. That's true. And that in and of itself is complicated. Right? That's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, what's complicated to you is simple to me, and what's simple to me is complicated to you. And that we have to exist in this world together. So we got this mismatch of complexity and simplicity, which is complicated. Right? So, you know, us coexisting in the world is going to be complicated because, okay, now we don't share the same way of being. That in and of itself is complicated. Okay, let's see. Writing things in brown marker. I won't forget. Okay. Don't. That's the technique you use. This is for toilet. Okay. Ephraim, I see what you're saying, but I'm assuming that God created an apparatus that you can know, and there are signs within yourself that you can know, similar to how you know other things around you. I agree with the Bible. Read the Quran, you'll see. So I guess I would just delve deeper. You assume that God created an apparatus that you can know. Where's that assumption coming from? Is like, it's faith based? It's just like, I just have faith, which, you know, that's valid. But, you know, I would like to know, like, where does that assumption come from? And I guess so. And then the reason why I ask that is because now we're getting to more the complex. It's not simple now, is it? Like, you assume, like, okay, God created an apparatus. Where's that assumption coming from? Like, it's a issue of faith, which in and of itself is complicated. Then I could talk further about that. Okay. I've read the Quran, by the way. I'm just interested in religions. So I've read the Quran. Very interesting text as well. There's proof and evidence. What do you mean? There's proof that there's an apparatus which God created inside of you that you can use. Where is this proof? Where is this evidence? I would like to see. And then writing is like letting all my frustrations of problems that I've encountered, they are meant to be in the toilet or burning away your problems. Maybe you could be into journaling. That's the way people write down and vent their frustrations through journaling. I'm more interested in philosophy of solving human problems and to better ourselves through action and not wasting time theorizing about things which are complex or the things we have to no control. Yeah, see, what my point is you're interested in solving human problems, and you know, I postulate, throw the words at you, that there are many human problems that are not simple. They're not there. There are many human problems that are complicated, right? That meaning they don't have simple solutions. And I think that's where philosophy comes in, along with other disciplines. But I feel like oftentimes we, as humans, think there's a simple solution, and therefore we never are able to solve these complicated issues. And then, perfect example is climate change. Climate change is a huge problem, and it is a very complicated one. There's no straightforward answer to climate change. There's no simple answer to climate change. Climate change, the way we solve climate change is going to be a very multifaceted set of lots of integrated systems and disciplines. Schools of thought and industries have to come together. Energy industries, oil industry, all types of different science, the labor market, economics has to get involved. All this, and even the way society works, like the way we value each other, right? That has to change. It's going to be, to solve the issue of climate change is a very complicated, which is why it's so difficult, which is why it's not being dealt with, right? Because there's so many layers to it, right? But we need to start acknowledging the fact, okay, this issue is complicated. We're going to have to buckle down, fasten our seatbelts, and get ready. And we can do it. We can do it as human beings. I mean, we do all types of amazing things. The classic example is, we flown to the moon. You know how hard it was to go to the moon? It was very difficult. It was not simple to go to the moon, right? To send a man to the moon. That was a very complicated thing to do, but we did it. So the humanity can do complicated things. We just launched they call it the James Webb Telescope, which we now can see all these really cool pictures. They just launched that last year, and now we see all these really cool pictures of the universe with the James Webb. That was very complicated. It took 20 years to do, and there were 3,000 ways it could have failed, right? And there were all these steps that were involved. And it was all these industries that had to come together to make it happen. Launching that satellite and making it work was not a simple thing to do. It was very complicated, but it happened. We did it, right? We can do complicated things. It's possible. And and further to that, some problems that we have, like understanding how the universe began, that requires complexity. There's no simple way of understanding that. Right? It's complicated. That's all I'm saying. So if we want to solve all of humanity's problems, we're going to have to embrace complexity. That's what I'm saying. Okay. What I mean is that we have our own way of solving problems. When I say simplicity within complexity and vice versa, what is simple for me to solve? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, talked about that. Look deeply into Islam. You'll see it. If you're truly looking for it, seeing as Islam means submission to the truth. But obviously there's no compulsion in religion. All right. So you'll just see it. Yeah, to me that just sounds like faith, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's or I guess it's deep insight. I guess, it's kind of like Buddhism with enlightenment. It's eventually, if you reflect far enough, it'll just click. I don't know. To me, that's not evidence, but I mean, it's an evidence. I think you can see it as a well, no, it's not evidence. What it is it's evidence for you. It's a strong enough compulsion within you that guides you, which is valid. Is like, well, if you feel that strongly about something, then I think that's justification for yourself to be guided by that. Kind of like me with Christianity. Is like I was deeply inspired by the life of Jesus Christ, to the point where it's like, okay, now I wanna embrace this, because his life was very meaningful to me. To the point where it's like, it's basically like evidence to me, but it's not like I can prove. I'm not trying to prove anything. It's more just like that. The lessons that Christ was talking about were so emotionally compelling to me that I felt like, yeah, this is legit. Like I'm gonna embrace this, which is I guess a kind. But I guess that's sometimes I think we do confuse evidence from like strong emotional conviction, which is two different things. Evidence is more like okay, this is facts, and I can use this to like justify why you should do this too. Like that, to me, that's what evidence is. It's like, it's not like emotionally based. It's not like a conviction based. Like, I don't even have to be convicted by evidence. I can just be like, look, this is just what happened, and here's the facts and the figures. And so, like, whether you are emotionally pushed by this or not, this is what's happening. And so you gotta get with the program, or you gotta get out, essentially. So I mean, to me, that's a little different, but I don't know if that, I wouldn't classify that as proof or evidence. You can't change your circumstances, but you can change yourself in how you deal with problems. That's what I mean when I say taking action and not theorizing. But sometimes you do have to theorize, right? You can't just act without like thinking things through first. It is important to like, and sometimes like you gotta think a little. You gotta like use a lot of thought, right? Because some problems like require that. Some problems are just that complicated, which again, that's what I'm saying. Some problems are just that complicated, where you just have to really like think it through before you act, right? You can't just act on. You just think about it for like a few minutes, like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. You could get into some problems doing that. So theorizing is important, but theorizing isn't the end all be all. Action is just as important, I think. I think they're equally as important. By changing your perspective on how we see things is the only way to solve our personal problems in a complex society. Yeah, I think so too. Changing perspective, which, is not simple. Because changing your perspective isn't just about accepting different facts and different experiences. It's also about like coming to terms with your emotions, right? Because oftentimes we tie our emotions with our perspective. We identify with our emotions. Like we formulate a sense of self with our perspective. And so when we change our perspective, we change like our sense of self. We're like, who am I? What was I thinking? Like, am I like, you kind of have this identity crisis, which can be emotional. So you kind of have to go through that process, which is, a thing. So again, it's like, it's not only like mental exercise, it's an emotional exercise too, it's complicated. Procrastination is a hindrance to most problems in most cases. It's like you find out that you are overweight and you notice you are overweight, but you don't take any action to do something about it. Yeah, and that could be for many reasons. right? Again, complicated. Because why do people procrastinate? There's no one reason why. It's funny because there's several videos on YouTube that will say it like that. Like, here's the reason why people procrastinate. I'll tell you exactly why people do this. This is why people don't do stuff. And it's like, there's many reasons why people don't do certain things, or why people procrastinate, or why people hesitate. There's many reasons, right? So, and so you have to figure out what's going on with you, and that figuring out, again, is not a simple process. That's what I'm talking about. Like, oh, I'll just go on YouTube and I'll listen to this, productivity guru that's telling me like, oh, okay, if I just follow these 5 steps, I cannot procrastinate anymore. And then you follow the 5 steps and it doesn't work. You're like, what the hell's going on? Well, it's not as simple as that, right? And HS writes, yes, it's all rooted in faith. Faith that your holy book is the word of God. I do believe Islam, being the fastest growing religion, is testament to its unique character. Jesus is a prophet too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the statistics of growing faith to Islam. I have some of my closest buddies are Muslim. I have no problem with Islam. That's not the religion I subscribe to, but I have good buddies who are Muslim, and that's fine with me. And if they grow, that's cool. I acknowledge and totally don't blame. Atheism is on the rise, right? People are secularism is on the rise, and people, more and more people are leaving Christianity, or they're saying like, I don't really believe in God. And it's like, and a lot of people get threatened by that, but I'm like, no, it makes perfect sense. Like, it makes perfect sense. Like, look at the hypocrisy. It's like, it makes perfect sense. And that doesn't affect my faith at all. It's like, I'm like, duh. Like, I mean, do you see like all the crap and the shit that all these religions like push? And all the evil that is actually instigated by a lot of these, like, and then you wonder why, which is to, I'm not, and so then the issue is, oh, well, are you saying that the religion is not valid, or like, oh, are you having a crisis of faith? No. It's just like, it's just, we got to stop teaching it in the way that it is, or we got to like get out of this old ass way of operating in, like, this patriarchal paradigm structures that religion falls under, that just needs to go away. It's like, just like what Let's Create '08 was talking about with Bruce Lee's philosophy. You got to absorb what's good, and you got to reject what's bad, and you got to, like, synthesize the good in your own convictions, right? And that's what, I don't know. I think like the whole like holy book, the sacredness of the Bible needs to just be jettisoned, right? Just needs to go. We need to be reading the Bible like reading a math book, whereas they're constantly editing it. For example, Isaac Newton. He developed one of the co-founders of calculus, right? Which was, a fraction of his academic career. Most of his career was spent like finding the philosopher's stone in alchemy. Check out the life of Isaac Newton. Like, he spent the majority of his like professional life was spent like trying to find out if how he can change lead to gold. That was like his main objective. Like all his like laws of gravity and stuff, that was like kind of stuff that he did like on the side. But the main years and years of his life were spent trying to do alchemy, which we know is like pseudoscience. And it's just funny how in science it's easy for us to like be like, oh well, obviously we're just gonna reject that, obviously, and then we're gonna like embrace like his laws of physics. Like, of course we're gonna like take that, and we're gonna like reject all the nonsense that he did, which doesn't make him it doesn't invalidate him. It's just like he did some good stuff and then he did some bad stuff. We'll just take the good. But we don't do that with religion, which is like, in my opinion, stupid. It's just dumb. We should be doing the same thing. Like, okay, there's these laws that are in the Old Testament that are just archaic and they don't really make any sense. Like, we should just get rid of them. Like, they should be like not acknowledged anymore because they don't even make any sense. Just like in science we do, but we don't do that. This is. I think that's where we need to go. But there are people doing that in theology, right? Theology, there are people doing that, but theology is not very popular at all. So, there's that. The more you complicate things, the worse things will get. Sometimes it's better to simply simplify how we live our life. Less is more. Yeah, you shouldn't on purpose complicate things. I mean, that shouldn't be something you should like do all the time. I'm just saying, like, I guess, but yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, there's some things that are just not simple. There are many problems in life that you cannot simplify. That's all I'm saying. But the problem is we act as if we can simplify them, and then these problems don't ever get solved, and we're just in this loop of despair. It's like, why? I don't understand why we're not solving these problems, because we're not acknowledging the complexity of the problem. But if we were just like, you know what, this is gonna be difficult, this is gonna be hard. Let's just deal with this, right? But it's like, no, there's gotta be a way to simplify this, and it's just not, right? That's all I'm saying. Like, if it can be simple, yes, absolutely go and simplify it. But if it can't, acknowledge it. Just say, like, And I think in life, that's the thing. I'm trying to think. Let's another example. Like healthcare, right? Healthcare is a huge problem in the United States of America. Most people can't afford it, right? So how do we solve the issue of like the nonsense that is healthcare? You try. You try and get insurance claims for something, and you gotta jump through these hoops. And it's like, and some people will argue like, well, that's the problem. It's overly complicated. And it's like, well, okay, but it's like these systems upon systems upon systems. So I mean, that's an example of like what you're saying. You gotta simplify it, but to simplify it is a complicated process. It's kind of like when you do a math problem and you have to simplify the math problem, right? You simplify the math problem, but to simplify it, it's complicated. It's complicated. It's a complicated process to simplify it. That's all I'm saying. If you gotta find the least common denominator, that's hard. With some, it's hard to do it. But when you're finished, once you're done, you have this simple thing you're left with. But you had to go through that complicated process to get to it. A lot of problems in life are like that, where it's like, okay, I do want this to be simple, but there's this road of complexity I'm gonna have to take to make it simple. That's right, and then that should be acknowledged, right? Let's see. Am I still? What music am I playing? Okay, still there. Cool. You have to take action to solve a problem. Yep, you do have to take action. Can't be idle. You gotta take action. HS, I agree. Religion requires you to live by a rigid rule book, and in today's liberal cultures, it's just not appealing to the youth. Understandably so. Well, I mean, religion doesn't require you to live by a rigid rule book. I mean, this, the way that these fundamentalist evangelical Christian group that's like a small minority of all Christians, the way they teach it is like, yeah, you're supposed to follow this rigid rules of the Bible, but there are many schools of Christianity, just like all the other religions, where it's like, no, actually, it's like, this is like more, you gotta take this more like a book of poetry or like a book of symbolism. Yeah, I was just reading, I was actually just listening to a radio show. It's called Fresh Air. It's like a really popular NPR show. It's like, if you know NPR, National Public Radio, Fresh Air is like one of the big ones. And there was a host on that was talking about the Book of Revelations, and how like for years and for centuries, the Book of Revelations was considered this book of symbolism and like poetry, and it was not supposed to be taken literally. Like, no, most people read Revelations and they didn't like actually take it literally, right? But in the mid 1900s, all of a sudden there was this movement where they like, no, you need to take this literally, just out of nowhere. It's like, and it's like this weird way, because the Book of Revelations is a very weird, it's a very weird book. It's hard to understand because it's symbolic. Like, and that's how it was written. It was written to be symbolic, and to have like a loose interpretation. But I think it wasn't mid 1900s. I think it was like the 1800s, I believe. I'm trying to think. No, I think it was like the late 1800s, the 19th century, the late 19th century was when, a minority group of Christians were like, no, we need to take the Book of Revelation serious, like literally, which is like, a divergent type of way of interpreting like Revelations. For centuries, that was not the case. But all of a sudden, people were like, oh no, we'll take this literally. So, religion doesn't require you to, it's just like there's certain interpretations that require you, which may or may not be correct. Oftentimes they're not correct. It's like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's complicated. You have to really study, like, you gotta study the history of religion to like kind of fully understand what's going on, and like kind of practice it correctly. Because if you're just like only focused on modern history, like you're basically misinterpreting religion, right? Because there's many ways of interpreting religion throughout the ages of humanity, right? So you gotta like understand the many ways that religion has been interpreted throughout the aeons for you to like get a kind of more informed, educational, and more constructive and progressive way of like interpreting religion and practicing it, I would say. Let's see here. Even though your action may fall, but that how we learn through failing. Okay, yeah, failure is part of learning. Yeah. Cool. Bruce Lee quotes. Let's see, Efron. When you read Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, what did Hegel mean by absolute spirit? Did he mean state of unification with God as a human collective? Or can individuals do that according to Hegel? Well, the way I interpret absolute spirit from Hegel, this is just the way I interpret it, which I think that's pretty... Maybe it's all about. It might not be, but I think I saw absolute spirit for Hegel is a collective spirit. So it's like it's not. It's like individuals have their own individual spirit, but they contribute to this collective spirit, right? That moves reality forward. So absolute spirit is that collective, that collective. Let's say one word you could use is spirit, but let me see if I could say it more accurately. Spirit in like Hegel's way of thinking is like this drive that's moving reality forward. That's what the spirit is. It's like the spirit is what is moving reality, existence forward. It's progressing reality. It's progressing existence, and it's a collective type of. It's all of reality is doing that. So all of our individual spirits, and it's not just like human spirits. It's like just everything. It's like animals and like even like inorganic materials, they all have this innate inner individual spirit, which is then collectively together acting as in unison to push reality forward, right? So that's what the absolute spirit is, right? It's this drive, this universal drive by all beings. Pushing existence to its goal. That's the way I interpret it. Let's see. Yeah, it's a unification with God. Yeah, that's what it is. As a human collective, yes. Or can individuals do that according to Hegel? No. So yeah, this is the first one. The way I read it. The way we get in touch with God is through our collective, our unification. But we use our individual self to contribute toward that unification, right? So we do this, so we operate as individuals, but the goal is to collectively. So don't think of it like the individual doesn't matter. Like it's only through the individual that the collective gets realized. So it's all of our individual existences operating together in unison that drives existence forward. And this is what God is, right? This is how we unify ourselves with God, is by because we are the ones that are moving existence forward, which is what God's will is. Right? This is what Hegel is saying. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Yeah, that's true. That's Bruce Lee. Okay, lots of Bruce Lee quotes. I'm just reading these Bruce Lee quotes. Yeah, failure is definitely an opportunity to learn for sure. Cool. Let's see if I got anything else. Yeah, I guess I'll if there's nothing else. One thing I put is I'll end with this. Yeah, I put like I think that's why learning math is pretty important. A lot of there's this whole idea like math is you can't apply that to anything. Like why do we learn all this mathematics? There's arithmetic, which is just addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Learn how to add fractions to get percentages. And, that's about as good as it. Learned about decimals. But, calculus and, linear algebra, differential equation, like all this higher level math, like, it's a waste of time. Even like trigonometry, geometry, like, what's all the point of all that? A lot of people say that. But, I think, and then, there's also the math purists that are like, well, math is beautiful and we need to, it's good to learn math just for math's sake. And, it's this beautiful thing that describes reality and, it gives us insight to, how the universe functions. And it's a language that we can use to describe, how things operate, which is true too. And that's cool. But, I would always say like, mathematics is really useful for everybody to learn, like even like more higher level math, because it really does prepare you to deal with life's problems in the sense like it really teaches you how to break down really complicated problems into steps. Like when you take a math, like when you take a calculus test, and it doesn't have to be calculus, it could be like trigonometry or something. It doesn't have to be like super high level. But, you take a math test and you got like a really complicated problem. It's like, okay, I got this this long problem that's going to take me like about 20 minutes to solve. So, okay, let me break this down step by step, because you got to, you show your work and you learn how to like take a very complicated problem and break it down step by step and eventually get to the solution. And, I think that's very useful for a person to learn, like, because we're always confronted with like really complicated problems, and sometimes we get, we'll get overwhelmed. It's like, oh shit, this is a huge problem. How am I going to solve this? Just go back to your math. Like, okay, let's break this down step by step. Okay, let's break it down into its parts. Okay, this problem here is this. This situation is this. Okay, now we're breaking it down. Okay, I can solve this part of the problem. Okay, let me solve this part of the problem. Okay, with both these solutions, I can now go to solve that problem. It teaches, it basically, one of the cool things about mathematics is that it teaches you basically how to confront and deal with complex problems, right? Which is, and I'll always say that, that'll be my defense for math. It's like, because, you'll hear that often. It's like, oh, there's no reason to learn math. All this really complicated. It's a waste of time. It's like, no, it's not. Because, it trains you. It really does train you to, like, not be, intimidated by complexity. It trains you to not be anxious and scared of, like, difficult things, right? Like, overwhelming, problems. You're like, okay, I remember how I did this with the math, so I'm gonna treat it just like that. And you'll learn, like, okay, let me write it down. Let me write down the steps. Like, let me write down the little subsections of the problem. And all right, now that I've broken this down into smaller problems, I can now begin to like tackle this. I'm just saying, I think if we tackle these hard problems in that way, maybe we live more constructively. I don't know. Okay, so anything I'm missing here? So, how to deal with complexity can only be active through dissecting or dismantling the complexity of things to find the root cause, and then breaking down complexity and simplicity, simplify them. Yeah, root cause analysis. Math proofs help us think logically. Pure math, yes. Yeah, math proofs. That's a great way. But, but also don't want to like fall into the trap of like math purists that are like, oh, you could break down all of life's problems using mathematics. Well, that's not true either. Because some problems aren't logical. Let's say, like, not all problems can be solved logically. I actually learned that myself. I was one of those people who's like, you can break down anything using logic. Nope, that's not the case. A lot of problems defy logic, and there's other methods to solving those problems. So I'm just saying with math, you kind of, it helps train you to like deal with complexity. But it is true, like certain problems you can't approach them in mathematical ways, but you should, I would say, definitely use your approach, meaning like, the lack of intimidation, right? Like the breaking things down step by step, which is not like necessarily just math, right? But math definitely teaches you how to do that. But one of the things with math is like, at the end of it, you have this final, neat, simple answer, which a lot of life's problems, like when at the end of it, you don't have like a neat, simple answer. You just have this mess, right? Like that's kind of like, that's life, right? And so sometimes math can kind of like fool you in that way. Like, what? I solved the problem, but I don't have a simple answer. I have this complex heap of all this other stuff. Like, yeah, that's life. Life is like that sometimes. Yeah. Let's see. So the Japanese class is Tuesday, 7 p.m. Not necessarily. I would just encourage you to check your email. Usually it's on Tuesday. Hopefully it's on, usually it's, last time I think it was 8. Oh, no, it was 7, wasn't it? No, I don't know if it was 8 or 7. I forgot. But yeah, it just depends. So I'll try my best to give an announcement beforehand for the times, but I can't guarantee. I just got too many other stuff going on. But hopefully it'll be around that time. Cool. Yeah, that's true. That's the thing. Like, basically all math equations are about simplifying them. A lot are, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, math is very helpful up to a certain point, right? Because not all problems can be simplified, right? So that's the other thing. Yeah, and then Bruce Lee. Cool. Yeah, Bruce Lee's awesome. Yeah, I think I've heard he did some philosophy, but I never got really deep into his stuff, but that's cool. That's cool. Dealing with fear can be hard, so math can help. The problem seems insurmountable. Yeah, because I definitely remember taking those higher level math courses like Calculus 3. or like differential equations and seeing those problems on the test and be like, oh shit, that's hard. And you know, you'll take you like 45 minutes to like solve a problem on the test, and you're like, whew, I did it. You know, I don't think I ever got like 100% on a problem, but you know, I'd get like most of the points. I'll be like, hey, there you go, I went through. So no, those problems, solving those problems helped me approach life in a more calm way, where, because you know, I encounter complicated problems all the time, as everybody does, and you know, I like to take myself back to those times when I was taking those hard math classes, be like, okay, I could do this. I just need to kind of break it down as best as I can, kind of like those differential equations I used to solve. Yeah, philosophy can be applied to everything. Absolutely. Business, self-improvement. Yep, it's true. Okay, I think that is all I have to say in this stream. But I want to thank those that joined, that for hanging out with me. Yep, I tried to go outside, but I couldn't get my camera to work. So I'm like, dang it. I have this flip cam, and I'm like, oh, you know, I heard like those old flip cams don't really work with these streaming softwares, because their whatever output is just too old. These streaming software can't recognize them. I heard that, but I tried it anyway. It's like, yep, that didn't work. And it's nighttime now, and so I used the webcam, and the webcam doesn't pick up like is not as sensitive to light as my flip cam. So I'm like, wow, I'm really dark. So I can't go outside. And then this thunderstorm happened, and the internet went out for a little bit, but I'm glad I was still able to do it. So that's cool. But yeah, thanks for all that joined me. And anything else, send an email if you made it. Yeah, I'll try and remember to send an email. Thanks for sharing all your ideas. Yes, thanks for popping by, Ben B. And you know, I'll see you next week, hopefully, for another stream. Got some more ideas, and then maybe I'll even have a video with one of my techs. We'll see. But until then, see you later.